You're listening to 99.1 WQRT LP, and welcome to Radio Free Book Club for June 2024. I'm Ken Honeywell. I'm a writer and reader from Indianapolis, Earth. I heard a mutual friend of ours, Craig, on the way over here doing a station ID for WQRT, our friend Vess Rutenberg, who noted that we were on Earth. So someday, when someone in a far distant galaxy picks up this transmission, they'll know, a little bit more accurately where it came from.
The first question will be, what's Earth?
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of what's Earth, this month we are talking about a first novel from a young writer named Scott Alexander Howard. It's called The Other Valley. Howard, according to his Google biography, has a PhD in philosophy from the University of Toronto, where he wrote an award-winning dissertation on literary emotions and the passage of time.
Interesting.
That seems pretty consistent with the subject of The Other Valley, which is science fiction, fantasy, some kind of alternate Earth. We'll definitely get into all of that and possibly into whether Scott Alexander Howard needs all those first names. I say yes, he does. But first, let's get a read on who's in the room with us this month. In addition to our producer, Galileo, everybody's a veteran of the show. And I know everyone here doesn't mind a little weird fiction in their lives, so let's let them introduce themselves. Craig, I've already sort of introduced you, or at least I've alluded to your presence.
Sure. I'm Craig Von Deylen. I'm a father, architect, music fan, philanthropist, guy about town.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, you are. I weren't you coming up with a new adjective every time?
Yeah, I was like, when's he going to stop? Wow.
I think last time we had Dan Barden, he was a flaneur, which is quite a nice one.
I am a philatelist.
Yeah. Thank you, Craig. Hello, Jen.
Hi, my name is Jen Bingham, and I am a reader and cat owner from Indianapolis.
Yeah, how many cats you have these days?
I have 3.
Yeah.
They're doing very well.
Yeah. What are their names?
Jake, Finn, and Lady Rainicorn.
Okay.
Exposes me as an Adventure Time fan, but I'm also not up to date on it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know the show. I know of the show. I don't know it. My impression is it's a really interesting show.
It is. It's very quirky and fun and weird. It gets weirder as it goes on, too.
Yeah. I might have to do that one of these days. Yeah. Okay, Christine, you've been on the show before.
I have, yeah. Hello, everyone. Christine Hudson on Planet Earth here, and I'm based in Indianapolis. Love reading. I've also had energy lately to do some writing, which feels nice. I work in marketing and spend a lot of time lately traveling and time outdoors. I also am a proud pet parent of 2 wonderful cats who are driving me crazy this week.
As they do. I've decided a long time ago that the only answer to why is my cat behaving that way is because it's a cat.
It's a cat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everybody. And just as a reminder to listeners, this podcast is going to be one big, long spoiler. It will be spoiled early and often, continually. So if you want to read The Other Valley, you might want to skip the show and come back at another time, which you can do because you can find the podcast version of Radio Free Book Club just about anywhere you stream podcasts. We're part of WQRT's lineup of great shows, so tune us in, check out the other books we talked about, and let us know what you think. So, okay, Christine, this book was your pick.
It was. I take full responsibility.
Okay. Can you set it up for us a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. In this book, The Other Valley, which is, in my opinion, doesn't really fall into one genre, but it's sort of a science fiction fantasy. The early part of this book, honestly, to me, also feels very young adult, very YA. And it's set in a town that is the central focus of the book, but very importantly, to the east and west of that town, there are identical towns that are 20 years in the past or 20 years in the future. The novel is set around a 16-year-old named Odile, who is Pretty much she's vying for a spot on the sort of council of people who get to decide if you go backward or forward and for what reason. So the story is centered around her trying to become a conseiller, essentially, that's the council that makes those decisions. And she finds out via a visitation that one of her friends is going to die. And so the book is centered around her sort of dealing with this position of wanting to be on the council that makes these decisions, while also accidentally becoming closer to and sort of falling in love with the guy who's going to die. And then the book skips ahead to all the ramifications of what happens after his death and after she withdraws from the program that would have sort of made her on this council of time traveler police is what I call them.
Right.
And she ends up on instead the actual sort of police force, the gendarmerie, who are responsible for escorting people across the border. And it sort of just follows her as her life unfolds as a 16-year-old and then a 36-year-old with a view of her as a 56-year-old. And I feel like that is sort of the main premise of the book. And I feel like it is so simple, or not simple, but like I'm surprised there isn't a book like this yet that exists. Like it's a fairly simple premise, 20 years ahead or 20 years back.
It is a very simple premise. It is something that I haven't seen anything like it anywhere. You've been listening to Book Summaries by Christine Hudson. We love her for that.
I always give long summaries.
She does, and that's why we call on her. Jen, what were your overall impressions of the book?
I really didn't like the central conceit of 20 years ahead and 20 years behind. And I was very enraged by it, like the first couple chapters. And I didn't want to read the book, but I had to. And it definitely drew me in. The characterization and the writing were fantastic. And it made a conceit that I find irritating seem normal. He really embodies this world and makes it seem real and consistent and very interesting. So I enjoyed the book, but I was also irritated by the initial concept quite a bit.
Yeah, interesting. What irritated you about it?
I just didn't like it. It was like, why does this world exist like this? It doesn't make sense to me. And usually I like fantasy and science fiction. So there was just something about that central idea that I did not like.
Yeah, interesting. Craig, what do you think?
I kind of am on the same page with Jen. I said, it just seems like a bizarre prison planet. Like we're going to put these people here in this weird paradigm and see how they do. But it also was the most odd vehicle for introducing all these concepts of time travel and the paradoxes that arise when you experiment with time travel. It's just kind of a weird way to introduce all those concepts. But then as I started, it's beautifully written. As I started getting into it and started to like contemplate all the different paradoxes once again that come in with time travel, it became more and more interesting, and the story developed well in that too, because then I wanted to know what the heck's going to happen. I did not expect the jump forward in part 2. And when that happened, it was sort of like jarring. And then you start to wonder what's really going on. I was it sucked me in at that point.
Yeah, I will agree. I would say it really sucked me in at the beginning. I thought it was an interesting concept, and I wanted to know what it was, like what that was all about. Mm-hmm. I did not find out what that was all about. And that to me was very frustrating.
Yeah.
I was really hooked on the first half of the book.
Yeah.
And then to me, it kind of devolved into just a regular time travel, oh, look, we're changing the past kind of story. And that to me was a problem. And Christine, it's interesting. That was also my impression. It felt like YA. And that's not a slam on it. I read plenty of YA, plenty of YA, and I think it's really well written YA. But that is how it felt to me. And maybe it was just the teenage protagonist, which I thought she was pretty well done. I was really, really kind of hooked.
Yeah. I feel like the YA part of it felt, very much so in the beginning. Once it jumps ahead and she's 36, it's suddenly sort of lost that YA feel. But especially because for a minute there, we had so many YA books that were like teenagers on the cusp of like growing up in adulthood and has to choose their life path. And I thought that part specifically felt YA. And I didn't care about her I feel like the first part of the book focuses a lot on her developing these sort of social relationships, which is a really big part of being 16 and finding out where you fit in. And then she falls in love with this guy who she knows is going to die soon. Well, she didn't think it was going to be that soon, first of all. I think she thought they had more time. But yeah, it did feel, I feel like so I've read this, I ended up sort of reading this book twice, or I'll say 1.5 times. I first read it back in April, like very beginning of April. Then I reread it because I realized I just had forgotten. I've read other books since then, so I wanted it to be fresh in mind. And upon my second read of this book, I will say my first reading, I had the exact same thought as you, Jen, where I was like, this is a horrible book about time travel. Like this isn't how you do time travel. Second reading of the book, I'm realizing this book isn't about time travel. I feel like it is. And since you've read his background, Ken, I actually feel like this book is more about existence and like what it means to be a person and contemplating the present, past, and future. I think choosing time travel as a way to express that is risky because time travel is hotly contested, right? Like there are so many expressions of time travel, so many nuances, so many arguments. People are passionate about it. So I think choosing time travel to have a discussion, in my opinion, what this book is just a discussion about yourself and your purpose in life and your path in life. And I think the time travel bucket is risky because there's a lot of fans of time travel. And this book it's not a time travel book. And so I don't think it handles the time travel very well at all.
See, and I thought it was a time travel book.
You thought it was?
I thought that it just devolved into just a time travel book.
It did at the end.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I didn't get, and I think I would say I understand that reading of it, Christine.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know philosophically if there was anything I was supposed to get out of it.
Yeah.
About how I should live my life or anything like that. I do understand that whole idea that maybe it is about the choices we make and how they affect our future. Mm-hmm. But she ended up going back and making everything okay. So it's like, it's just another one of those, what's the Ray Bradbury story? The Sound of Thunder, where the guy goes back, where they're going back to hunt dinosaurs. And, the guy steps off the path on a butterfly and he ruins the future.
Yeah. Is that where that comes from?
That is where the butterfly effect, that is where that comes from, is that Ray Bradbury story.
Neat.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Yeah. Something that jumped into mind when Christine was talking was it's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life. Because it's like the consequences of what you've done in your life and how that's affected everything around you. And that may be more of what it is trying to drive at, is like your life is a product of all the things that have happened around you during your life. And being able to change them is a bit of a luxury. So,
well, one that they were trying desperately to prevent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the whole point of Yvette's one class of hers, was about how everything is dependent upon everything that's come before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of, has anybody read anything by Robert Sapolsky? His book last year was called Determined. What he's basically, his argument is that there's no such thing as free will, that everything we do, everything that happens to us is a result of everything that's gone on with us a second before, an hour before, a day, a year, a millennium before.
Sure.
That there's really no such thing. And that seems to be kind of what Yvette's whole lecture was about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt there was a strong theme of trying to control people in this book. have a lot to say about it, but that seemed like a central theme to me. It was interesting.
Like if Rhett was trying to control people?
The whole council, everybody within the council and the guards even were just, like you mentioned it being like a horrible prison planet. It did. It seemed kind of awful. It was just very grim.
Yeah, well, what do we think it was? Does anybody have an idea? Can anybody state what they think this place they lived was? I mean, it's some kind of Earth analog, right? Because they're talking about months. You know, they mentioned the month of December, and the people seem human, and
they have cars.
They don't seem to have telephones or the internet.
They seem to live in somewhere in Provence, in France.
It's very French Canadian.
Right.
Yeah.
They drink a lot of wine.
They do.
Even the 16-year-olds. That's why this would not be a YA book.
Yeah, the girl was like hungover at work, or not at work.
Lit at night with her mom.
Yeah. Well, that family owned a winery, but
There's nothing like it. I mean, that's the thing. And I think that might be the point, is there is nothing. No one's thought of doing this before, and this philosophy guy did. It's got to be a philosophical concept.
That's what I thought. He wanted to create a world where he could talk about these things, so that he kind of came up with this idea that I don't particularly like, but he executed it very well and made me care about the characters.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt very much like by this wanting to control something that is completely out of our control, right? Like events, time, space, the ultimate timeline, space continuum. None of that is in our control. And I felt like like for how much Everett and all of the like council members wanted to control time, and how much the military in this book wanted to control the people, I feel like it was almost like sort of at least got me thinking about like, am I a prisoner of my timeline? Like, are we bound to like how much control do we have over this? And the answer is nothing, unless we consider, like, I think she said in that contingency, like everything that has already happened has already happened. And the only, like, you could possibly change it by, or not change it, or I think I have it highlighted somewhere, but like, it's not that something has changed. It's just that it never was.
Yeah.
It's like a giant social experiment.
So what it made me wonder was, how far in the future do people know something that happened? Like, how far in the future is it controlled?
How many valleys?
Because, it seemed like they just talked about the ones that were 20 years away. They never mentioned the ones that were further.
But
they did mention that there were more, and then there were history books.
Yeah. And they mentioned that one woman who got killed going past the place where she was 36 and going to the 16 because she wanted to go back and prevent herself from
marrying.
Lucy.
So she would have gone past the 20 years, but that's the only time that really came up.
That was the only one. Yeah, there were all these legends about, you know, stuff that had happened, and clearly they were guarding against it. And clearly, well, they had the Potter's Field where they buried the bodies of the people who they killed trying to escape to the past or the future.
Yeah, I kind of want to read it again now, because I think there's like little clues in the beginning. There, I feel, did you get that the second time you read it, Christine? Is there like little clues in the beginning?
Is.
Okay.
It's definitely, I will say, when I finished this book the first time, so like halfway through the book, I was like, this is a solid 2 out of 10. Or not 10, I guess 5, right? Like up until, especially the YA part of it, I was like, oh my gosh, here we go, another YA book. So up until honestly 3/4 of the way through in my first read, I was like, this book is a 2 out of 5. Like, I hate it. And something about the end, I personally actually liked the ending. And I think it's hard to pull off any sort of time travel ending, but I actually really liked it. So I ended up liking the book a lot. But because I hated it so much at first, I wanted to get other people's thoughts on it. So that's why I recommended it for this book.
Okay. Well,
because I wanted to know what someone, I was like,
motives.
Did anyone else, like, I feel like I had such a massive shift in what I thought of this book. And then upon second read, I'm just going to say, I actually love this book. I loved it so much more the second time around. Yeah. And that's not a book. Again, I didn't like this book when I first started it. And then by the end, I was like, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And again, I read it pretty quickly this time just because I was short on time. But I loved it this time around. I think everything makes it just, all the clues are there. I think there's a lot of sort of like underlying nuance that I missed the first time around because I didn't know where we were headed. And then this time around, the biggest thing I kept thinking of was like, what if I've read this book before? Like, how many times have I read this book? And like, what if this book were out of order? Does it matter what order this book is in? Like, what if we picked her up as a 36 or a 56-year-old looking back to her 16? Like, so then I'm thinking like could these chapters just be rearranged?
Wasn't there a Netflix show or something that was like you just got the chapters at random?
Yes, there was one.
I can't remember what that was called, but it was like everybody watched it in a different
order. Everyone was freaking out.
Some kind of heist.
It was
show, right?
Due to my attention span issues, I didn't see it. Yeah. I think I started and I was like, oh.
I think I did too.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone got the episodes. Not everyone, I guess. I don't know how many infinite combinations there would be, but it was like, 10 episodes or 8 episodes? Like and Netflix would just give you an episode to watch. And it apparently didn't matter in what order you watched them. And I kind of wonder that about this book, if it could be read from 56 to 36 to 16 or 36 to 16 to 56.
I don't know. You wouldn't be, but if you did that, you would be left with the wrong world at the end of. Because,
but which one is the wrong world?
Back to 16.
But then all that stuff didn't happen.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? You have to figure she never joined the gendarmerie, right?
Christine just blew my mind. Like, which is the right one?
I think there's something like that in the beginning that I highlighted where she was saying in the painting they described, she's like, our valley is at the center, but for everyone else, their valley is the center.
Yeah.
So who's the center? There isn't one. There's no center.
Yeah, I wondered how far it went.
I mean, endless,
well,
I think.
How far it went. And then to me, again, it's just like, so for example, Yvette knew that Edme was going to die.
Right.
And you have to figure probably Pichagru knew that Edme was going to die. And by their behavior, it seemed like Edme's parents knew he was going to die. Now, we don't know how they got that information, but it seems like they did.
I don't know about that. Why do you say that?
Because they kept him in. They grounded him.
Well, yeah, but that was because they didn't necessarily want him to be a violinist.
Yeah.
I thought they were being overprotective and trying to keep him.
I think they got an inkling.
Yeah, I did.
So on the first go round, I thought that they heard that they had been seen, because if Odile saw them, then someone else could have too, right?
Right. Yeah. On the lake. Yeah.
There's no who knows how many people could have seen. So at first I thought they want to keep him safe by keeping him indoors and thereby changing his future. Right. But by doing that, I feel like they caused his death, because the only reason he was like, no, sorry. So that's what I thought the first time. This time around, I actually think they just didn't want him to go to the conservatory. And so they didn't want him practicing violin, and so he had to practice in secret. Apparently on a cliff was the best place to do this.
Sure.
Which is like...
in the middle of the night.
In the rain. Yeah. Or was it raining or not?
It was wet. It was damp, one way or the other.
So like, that's not like, I don't know, 16-year-old logic, I probably would have done that too, right? Like, I want to hide from my parents and do the thing they told me not to do. But I mean, I feel like they, in trying to prevent his death, caused it, whether it was them trying to keep him safe and then causing him to sneak out, or whether it was that they didn't want him to play the violin and then he really had to like go far from home to practice.
But like, in a way, the Conseil is manipulating the future.
Yeah.
To make it stay the same.
Right. So trying to make it stay the same. So you have to question, did they manipulate Odile? Did they, in the future, when she was 56 years old, tell her to tell Lucy something that 36-year-old Odile would hear, to go back to, like, how far up the line does the manipulation go?
Yeah, how far did it go?
You see the paradox?
I mean, there's no way to know. And then I was thinking, what would happen if they just stopped trying to control anything?
Chaos.
But would it, or would it just write itself?
Maybe all those bubbles would collapse and there would be just a world and they could go somewhere other than the valley. I mean, it was just a closed system.
Right.
Yeah.
But then they'd have to meet themselves in several different life forms.
Maybe they would, but
maybe they'd all merge into one.
Yeah, maybe it'd all just collapse in on.
The complicating factor isn't that they live in this world where there are 20 years separation between these valleys. It's that they actually allow people to go back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's where it gets complicated.
Well, let's talk about that. Why in the world would you allow people to go back and forth?
No, it's stupid.
Did anybody have a good, what was the name? Quinton? No. Did he have a good reason to go into the future to see his 20-year-old granddaughter?
No, he made me mad. I didn't like him.
Why would anyone agree to let him do that?
Right.
That's the injection of the human element into the concept, because we feel empathy towards people who are experiencing loss, and you want to give them some way to complete that loss.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens is you have this concept of time, and then you introduce human emotions and empathy, and now all of a sudden you're going to start playing with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets complicated.
I just didn't think either of the people we encountered, either the Piras or Quinton, had a good reason enough to go.
No, I agree with that. And the reason, it might have been Everett who said, we do that. It's not really a good idea, but we do it because it's always been done.
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
Yeah.
I think I highlighted that too.
But then I also think they put the least reputable people in society in charge of patrolling the border.
Yeah.
That is a particular job you probably don't want somebody to be like.
Yeah, if you have to murder people.
Yeah.
Well, you have to murder people. Yeah, that's a problem.
I think about, I feel like, again, on my second reading, I'm reading this less about the other valley and more about what Mr. Three First Names is trying to say about our existence. And it's true. Like, when something horrible happens, or if we know something horrible might happen, we'll take steps to avoid it. And after something horrible happens, we want so badly for peace and closure, right? Like, I would do anything to see this person again, or I would do anything to see my cat or dog again. And I liked that concept, like how much we long for that. Like, if I could just have lunch with my grandmother again or something. And so I really liked the idea. So once I let that go, the time travel element became about like, is there anything that I would go back or forth for? And what would that be?
Yeah.
And I don't think it would be anything. I think that's one of the questions that we asked was, would you go back or forth? And I think I would go nowhere.
Well, yeah,
I don't
let's answer that question.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, by the way, you're listening to Radio Free Book Club, and we're talking about The Other Valley by Scott Alexander Howard, Mr. Three First Names. And I think he does need them all, because I looked it up, and he's Canadian. There's a prominent Canadian curler named Scott Howard.
Oh, that's
right. So I think
that's so Canadian.
Right. So I think he needs the Alexander in there.
You put in Scott Howard anywhere in Canada, you're going to get that curler.
Yeah, exactly.
He was thinking about his SEO, you guys.
Yeah. So, Craig, would you, if you had an opportunity, would you go 20 years in the past or 20 years in the future?
So personally, if it were just me, I don't want to mess with that kind of stuff. It scares the dickens out of me. But if I divorced myself from my own person, hell yeah, I'd do it. It'd be a blast.
Which way would you go, though?
I'd go forward. I'd love to see what things are like in 20 years.
What you're like, or what things are like?
Things are like.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm sure I'll be. I hope I'm still alive, but I'm sure I'll be a lot more boring than I am today. So
interesting.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
But no, I just personally, I don't want to. I'm good with where I am. Like, I live in the present. And I'm very happy in the present. So I don't look back and go, oh, if I'd only done this, or what if I did that? So I don't do that. But it'd be kind of cool to go forward just to see what things are like in the future.
Yeah.
It's more of like we're living in a weird time right now with AI and quantum computing. I just want to make sure we're still around.
I don't know.
Or maybe you don't want to know.
Maybe we don't want to know.
Yeah. Maybe you're right. Yeah.
So. Yeah. Jen, how about you? Would you go past or future? 20 years.
I don't want to go to the future. I don't really want to go to the past either. There's been times in my life where something has happened that I really regret, where at that point in my life, I probably would have wanted to go back, but now I'm fine. So I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
Especially not to see a person like, so they're going to see the dead person when the dead person's still alive too.
That's weird. I feel like that would make the grief so much worse.
Yeah. I don't get it.
For me personally.
Yeah. Christine, past or future?
I wouldn't go anywhere. I would, because maybe if, like Craig said, if I had the option of seeing the future of another space that doesn't include me, then yes. But I feel like there's no way that I would see my future self and not want to do something. Like Odile saw herself, theoretically, as a 56-year-old scrubbing floors with her spine messed up. Our human instinct would be like, I have to interfere. I don't want that to be my future. So how would you not? So if the option were to travel 20 years to see myself in the future or in the past, I would do neither. I wouldn't tell my 16-year-old self anything. I wouldn't want to see my 56. And I think part of the reason I identified with this is because I am turning 36 this year. And so it felt very easy for me to imagine being Odile, where what would I tell 16-year-old Christine? Or what I remember how I felt at 16 and how apprehensive I was about the future. And I think I would just let myself be apprehensive. I wouldn't say anything. And then I also don't care to see myself at 56 if I'm still alive. I think, I don't know. I wouldn't move. I wouldn't go anywhere. I'm just, present is all I need to worry about. I can hardly handle the present. So what am I going to do with 20 years more of information?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go back 20 years. I mean, my life was 20 years ago was a great time in my life, but I don't see any reason to feel like I need to go back and tell myself anything. I don't really want to know if I'm here 20 years from now or not. I wouldn't mind going 40 years in the future, to me, that's the bummer about dying is but I want to know how the story continues. I don't really need to be part of it. I just want to know what goes on.
Happen. Yeah.
So kind of on that note, I have another question. So there's a point in the book, there's when Lucy tries to escape to the West. Lucy's she's on the 56 side in that valley, and she tries to escape to the 36 side so she can get to the 16 side to never meet her husband. And one of the characters says, well, why was she cutting through? Why doesn't she just go around? And I went, what? What do you mean go around?
You can go around?
If you can go around, what is going on here? What does that even mean? Did anybody else note that?
I assumed, I guess I just took that as part of the world building.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I think she thought she would get help from Odile again.
Yeah.
Well, she did, but I don't even know what would go around. You have how you can go around. Outside? You can go around this valley to get to that valley.
Maybe that's book
number 2. How do you do that?
So maybe it's more complex geography than what you think.
Yeah.
Or there's just an outside that's when you go behind a set and it's just not real.
The Truman Show or something?
Yeah.
There's another city.
I was thinking of the Truman Show a lot, actually. Just the thought of because I was imagining I think the whole point of not giving this an actual geographic feel was so that we wouldn't be stuck on technically Canada in 2028. I think that's what maybe they were going for, but because of the lack of that, my brain was just imagining a dome like the Truman Show, which I don't think that matters too much, but I think I did highlight that part, Ken, but I think I missed, even on the second time, the part about going around, because someone did ask, why would she do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's no other way to go?
Yeah.
Do you think this is the future of Canada?
Cool, if it is.
This is what we're going to do.
This is what Canada's working on, actually.
Yeah.
I thought of Westworld a lot.
Oh, yeah.
That's another
I
one.
can see that.
Yeah.
It seemed a lot kind of like Westworld.
Yeah. So kind of along the same lines, Jen, could you be a concierge?
No.
No,
I don't think so.
You would not want to take the test.
No, I don't like having responsibility of that magnitude and having responsibility for everybody in my city and being in charge of people's emotional lives and making those kind of decisions would be I would have no interest in that.
Yeah. You would just rather work in the butcher shop.
Yeah, I probably would rather work in the butcher shop.
Yeah.
Chopping something.
What about the archives? Do you think you'd work in the archives?
I could see that.
Yeah.
Like I would go in to the concierge thing as Odile. Is that her name?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Odile.
Did hoping to fail and get in the archives.
Yeah,
I
like
can
her
do
mom
that.
did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Craig, could you be a concierge?
The more I think about it, the more I wouldn't want to be there at all. I'd try to, if there is another direction,
There's a way
besides
around.
east and west, I'd be
Yeah.
heading south.
Yeah, what's my exit
I wondered
application?
what the other directions had too.
Yeah.
Be getting out. Desire to be a conseiller. No.
Yeah.
No, I'd want out. It sounds like the more I think about it, the more it seems like a prison of some sort.
It sounds like kind of a terrible place.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
It's almost
guards.
like, do you remember The Prisoner? Did you ever see that old 60s TV show starring Patrick McGowan?
I've heard of it, but
There
I
were
haven't
like
watched
13 episodes, and he was like a spy on this island, and he kept trying to escape, and he couldn't escape. And yeah, so weird. Christine, what about you? Could you be that kind of a judge?
No, I would turn that job down and do anything else. Not the butcher shop. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't want to be their military
Yeah,
either.
the
No.
gendarmerie.
I wouldn't do that. No.
Could you be doing that? Patrolling the fence.
No.
Their living arrangements were terrible.
Awful.
They
Yeah,
were.
it was like
They were
terrible. Those guys
prehistoric.
do such an important job.
And there's
they're-
only one woman?
Right.
Apparently.
Jeez.
At the
I mean,
time, yeah.
I felt this the whole time. I kept thinking, at least on the second read, I was like, "Is this just the military?" He's Canadian, so how much does he know about the
Police,
U.S. military?
basically.
But it
seems
felt like
prison guards to me.
it seemed like a mix of the military, who sort of draft or take people who maybe don't have a college path or anything else, and then
Yeah.
like suddenly here's our national security force. Not to speak badly of the military at all, but that's sort of the premise, right? Like you always have the option of enlisting.
Yeah.
And then a mix of the police, where maybe it's harder to get on a police force. I don't know. And then like a prison guard, like you're like, it's not even like law enforcement, really. It's more of just like brute force. But it was
Yeah.
a weird blend.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think my big issue was they weren't just patrolling the fence. They were also escorting people
Yeah.
to the other valleys.
That part was crazy to me. Like you think they would give that job to an officer.
You
or
would
like,
think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a gendarmerie is a military force with law enforcement duties
Yeah.
among civilian populations.
Okay.
Wow. It didn't seem like they had much training to me.
No, it
No.
really didn't.
No. Or and if they did, we didn't see it.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of didn't. I mean, you don't want them to know a lot because they have a
Yeah.
lot of power.
Right. Yeah.
And they could be a problem if they were really, really, really smart and savvy.
Well,
Yeah.
it said at one point that I didn't notice this the first time, but it said the council is like the head, and the military,
Mhm.
the gendarmerie, is the hands, the
Mhm.
force. And so I think they which I thought it was interesting they even let Odile enlist after she'd made it so far in the vetting program, because I think they want. I mean, it's like any regime, right? Where you have like the people, the big smart people talking, and then you make the other people do the brute force, all the labor. So I thought it operated the same, where I think they don't want people that ask many questions. They just follow and do what they're told. So I felt like that was the point, the purpose, but it still is surprising to me that that they let just anyone do the escorts. Like you think
Yeah.
there would be, because it doesn't sound, I was trying to get a sense for how often visitations happen and how common it
Well,
is.
not that.
It doesn't
right.
sound common.
Uh-uh.
So why not just send the big boss? What was his name? Like Jean-Claude or something. I don't remember what his name was.
Jean
Jean
Sylvie.
Sylvie.
It's not
Right.
very
Why not just
fun.
send
Maybe they
him to
just
do
don't
it?
want to.
Maybe.
It sounds kind of miserable.
But
that
if that's the
horrible
most
cabin.
important part of like upholding this society, then why wouldn't you send the same two people
Yeah.
to do all the visitations, especially the more dangerous ones, which is going to the future?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Really good question.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the resolution here. Let's talk about the ending. Did we like the ending? Were we surprised that Odile found her way back to save Edme and apparently erase the future?
I was surprised. The tone at the beginning of the novel was so melancholy. It reminded me of Never Let You Go.
Yes, it did.
Which had a very sad ending.
Right, which you didn't like, as I recall.
I did not like it but it was well done. So I was expecting a pretty rough ending for this.
Yeah.
And I liked it in an emotional sense, but I didn't like it in a story sense because it felt like it didn't belong with the rest of the book to me.
Interesting. Craig, what do you think?
No one loves a happy ending more than I do, but I was disappointed. I kind of wanted to end badly. I don't know why. It just seemed like, boy, it'd be really kind of interesting if she failed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Christine, you've already weighed in on really liking the book. And what did you think of the ending?
I like the ending personally. Especially because it seems happy, right? But like, again, happy for who? Like, this is one. So I also kept thinking about Lucy, who wanted to go back to never meet her husband. What if she met someone worse? Like, not that, I mean, he was an abusive, awful husband, right? So that sucks. So I don't want to minimize that. But just because she doesn't meet him doesn't mean everything's fixed. So to me, I liked this ending because I think it was a nice resolution to this story. And I thought the author did a good job of making characters likable and unlikable. And Edmund was likable. We like this kid, right? Playing his little violin. He sounds very aesthetic and cute. Like, just, we like him. We want to see him live.
We like him. And we like that he liked Odile.
Yes, it was cute. It was really sweet. Mm-hmm. So for a story premise, I liked that neat sort of tying up. But like, what if something worse happens? And I liked that if it would have been a perfect ending with no possibility of something messing up later, I probably would have been bored with it. But I was okay with being able to see a satisfying conclusion play out in front of us, knowing that, like, okay, she fixed one thing, I guess, if you want to call it quote unquote fixing, but like, what could happen next? They could get hit by a bus tomorrow.
All true.
And then what? Mm-hmm. So I like the ending. I like it a lot.
I thought I saw it coming a mile away.
Yeah.
It did not surprise me. It didn't satisfy me. I still wanted to know what this world we were dealing with was.
Yeah.
What was the secret behind the world?
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed that we never found out. It again, as I said, I just felt like it devolved into just like a straight, been there a million times before time travel story for me.
That's why the little bit of me wanted it to end badly. Because it was like, this is predictable. I don't want it to be predictable.
So there was also an explanation. So somehow, I forget the circumstances, but somehow after Odile has made the change, Yvette tells her that the reason she got to meet her 16-year-old self was that, it was something about the future had already been destroyed.
Yeah.
I just read
You've already been destroyed in the future, right?
I just reread this because I wanted clarification. It was because she was not in the same city that her originally where she's supposed to be. So the older Odile, who was 36, was not in the same city. She said something like, well, she wasn't in the right city. So when she got killed here, she didn't evaporate because she did change the future, but she didn't disappear because she was not in the place where she was supposed to be.
I have a hard time buying that.
Yeah.
That's what Yvette said.
Yeah. I mean, they had to explain it somehow, I guess.
The consciousness was in the 36-year-old, and then all of a sudden it was back in the 16-year-old.
Yeah. No, I get that. But I don't get how they met if she never existed in that future.
Because she crossed over.
Once she was out of the
crossed
city.
into another timeline, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she just still didn't exist in that future. So the future that she came from, I don't know.
Do you see why this book was so good? Because you can have these long conversations about how in the heck did that happen.
Yeah, that one bugged me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she made it sound like there was like a ripple effect and she had gotten outside. I thought I highlighted it, but now I cannot find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it was just dancing around the problem.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, she said the escapee you saw tonight was outside of the borders of her home valley when it was swept away. As a consequence, she was not swept away with it. Call it safe distance from the storm. That was the only bit.
I think the author made up something nice there.
Well, he has that opportunity. He created this entire universe.
I'm not dinging him on that. I think he tried to cover his bases. He was like, how is this going to work?
One of his readers was like, this doesn't make sense. So he inserted that in.
Yeah, his editor was like, bro.
There is a tremendous amount of creativity that went into this.
Absolutely.
This is not... It is easy to write something that's like typical science fiction time travel. This is pretty creative.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. So, okay, so 2 final questions. One is, The Other Valley has apparently already been optioned for a series.
No. Surprise, surprise.
Would you watch the series, and would you recommend the book, Craig?
I would definitely watch the series. I was just thinking about, like, when I was 18, my Uncle Jim suggested he gave it to me, The Hotel New Hampshire. And I have no idea why he suggested that I read that book. But this one, I would suggest this to, like, especially somebody a little younger. Maybe my kids. I may just give it to one of my kids and go, you should read this. And no explanation. And just let them do it. So, yeah.
Okay. Jen?
I would probably not watch the show because I never catch up on shows. And I don't love usually remakes of books that I've already read because I feel like I already know. And as for recommending it, I think I would, but maybe not warmly. I really did like it. I ended up liking it a lot, but that initial anger at the premise still haunts me.
Christine, would you watch it?
Yes, I do plan to watch this. I think it's pretty. I think the writing, the whole time I was reading it, just felt cinematic. Actually, we didn't mention this, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I hated, my least favorite thing about this was the lack of quotation marks. Drove me insane.
Yeah.
I can't think of one good reason for it. Besides, I think it just made the book look pretty.
Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That drove me nuts. But yes, I would still watch it because I thought the writing felt very cinematic, and maybe that's because there were no quotation marks and really not a lot of punctuation either. But yes, I'll watch the series. I think it's pretty. I'm interested to see how the valleys are represented on screen, and I would absolutely recommend this book. I think it's interesting, and even if it's not the best book I've ever read, it's one that I keep like chewing on in the back of my mind, and I think that's hard to do because I forget a lot of things, and this is a book that I hadn't been able to forget, so I would recommend it.
I wish I liked it better. I really liked Christine. I'm exactly opposite of you. I was really into the first part, and when we got to the second part where she was a gendarme, I just didn't care about it. I could see where it was going. It was just like, I don't care about this anymore. And it just, I having said that, I really did like the first part, and I probably would watch it, but just to see how they did it.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would be like, wow, I really got to watch that. But I would want to see how they portrayed everybody and what everything was like. So, yeah, I guess I would probably say no, ultimately. I'm kind of reluctant no. But, yeah, I thought it was pretty good, just not great. But I think probably at least someone has a recommendation for something that they think might be great. Christine, do you have one?
I do.
Okay.
I have recommended this before, probably on the show, Ken, and I think that you've read this, but Dark Matter by Blake Crouch.
Oh, yeah.
I think it is a really interesting other exploration of time that is a little bit more of like a nerdy time travel and less of like a literary fiction philosophical musing on the existence of time. So I'd recommend Dark Matter. And that is another one that is now a TV series on Apple TV, which I haven't seen, but people have told me it's good.
Okay.
And then I'm going to sneak in another recommendation just because this was mentioned at the end of the book and it felt like I couldn't ignore it. And Ken, this recommendation is you, but it's Jeff Vandermeer's Annihilation.
Oh.
At the end of the book, they start talking about annihilation and in terms of a sense of self and existence. And there's this border where so I'd recommend Annihilation too. Annihilation is a much better book, in my opinion, than Dark Matter. But I think if you're interested in the subject matter of time travel, Dark Matter is a good one. If you're interested in an unknown world and what it would mean to exist there, I would recommend Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer.
That is a good movie too. That's a good movie that's different from the book.
Ooh, yeah. That's a whole other discussion. Yeah. Yep.
But that whole Southern Reach trilogy is outstanding.
Yeah. I'm in it right now, so no spoilers. I just finished the second book.
Oh, I love the second book, maybe more than Annihilation.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to talk about this offline because the second book almost killed me trying to finish it.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. No worries. Great recommendations. Jen, do you have a recommendation?
The only thing I can think of that I've really liked recently is Dune, the movies 1 and 2, which completely swept me away, and I loved them.
Yeah. Did you read the books?
Yeah, I was a big fan as a teen. I probably read them multiple times.
Did you read all the books?
I read until they got really bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you like the book or the movie more?
I reread the book again. I liked the movie more than the book, honestly, but I've reread the books a couple times the book. I've just reread the first one a couple times as an adult, and I still love it. It's poorly written in some parts, but the story is gripping. Yeah.
Have you seen the old movie with Kyle MacLachlan and Sting?
No, I've never watched that one.
Oh, baby.
Sting, I forgot.
I remember when it came out, it was such a flop, and people had so much trouble with it in the theater. They were actually like passing out glossaries to people when they went into the theater of all the things in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is one in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I remember it. It was kind of a freak show. It was David Lynch. Yeah, it was something. Craig?
I just finished Frank Herbert's Dune.
Oh, wow.
Which was fantastic. It was really, really good. I'm glad. And I love the movies. So, yeah, when you said that, I'm like, that's what I was going to say. And then I had to set 3 books down in order to read this book so that I could be ready on time.
Okay.
Set the Boy Free, Johnny Marr's autobiography. Very good.
Okay. Awesome.
How Music Works by David Byrne.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Interesting.
And then I'm about halfway through Foundation's Edge by Isaac Asimov, which is, okay, so in the Foundation trilogy, it got bad too at the end. But this was the first follow-up to the Foundation trilogy that he wrote in the 80s. And it describes the concept of space travel and gravitational, how you would handle that as it pertains to gravity better than, in computers for that matter too, better than any science fiction writer I've ever read.
Huh.
It's actually, that book is fantastic.
Wait, what's it called again, Craig?
Foundation's Edge.
I think I read that.
Yeah, I would almost suggest even before you even thought about reading the Foundation trilogy, because it's a 3-book trilogy. Just read Foundation's Edge, because it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks, Craig.
That's it.
All right, so I have kind of a weird recommendation this month. I was browsing the graphic novels at Tomorrow Bookstore downtown, and I came across this little book by Kazuo Ishiguro called The Summer We Crossed Europe in the Rain, and which is a great title, but it's also filled with these gorgeous, evocative illustrations by the Italian artist Bianca Bagnorelli. And the copy in the book it looks like poetry, but it's not. It's song lyrics. He wrote these songs for the American jazz singer Stacey Kent.
Whoa.
Who is like Ishiguro is a huge fan of Stacey Kent and met her, and they started a relationship. So he started writing lyrics for her. And her husband, a saxophone player named Jim Tomlinson, wrote music for all of these Ishiguro lyrics, and she sings them. And I have to say, sometimes the lyrics veer into cheese a little bit, but it's vocal jazz. And if vocal jazz veers into cheese, that's probably fine. He's British, so maybe it's a Gloucester cheese or something like that. But it's such an interesting multimedia experience to read the lyrics and look at these gorgeous, graphic novel type illustrations and listen to the Stacey Kent songs. So, yeah, The Summer We Crossed Europe in the Rain by Kazuo Ishiguro. I always say Ishiguro. It's Ishiguro. And the illustrator is Bianca Bagnorelli. And Stacey Kent, you would be remiss to not play it with the Stacey Kent soundtrack.
It's a picture book. That's awesome.
It's a picture book. Yeah. It really is.
Next time I'm suggesting a picture.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
how do you get the playlist with it?
There's a QR code to the playlist, but you can just find the playlist on Spotify or anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really pretty. And I never listened to Stacey Kent before, but wow, she's a beautiful singer, and the songs can be kind of moving. So that's us. So you can find notes for this and all our shows on the Radio Free Book Club blog on medium.com when I get it all updated. Please consider following us. Drop us a note on Facebook. Stream the show wherever you listen to podcasts. We always want to hear what you think about the book and the show. For Jen Bingham, Craig Von Deylen, Christine Hudson, and all the members of Radio Free Book Club, I'm Ken Honeywell. Thanks for listening. And join us next month when we'll be doing something a little different, talking about the late, great Alice Munro in general, and in particular, her classic collection of short stories, Hate Ship, Friendship, Courtship, Love Ship, Marriage. Till then, read a book.